Let me just give you a couple of notes before we begin this sit, because it's something we haven't done in here in a while. We're going to use two labels ultimately in this sit. I'm going to call those labels plus and minus. I'm using plus and minus to avoid the other words, but you need the other words to explain the plus and minus. So, plus is things that you want, you like, that you think are good, that you think are the way they should be, that make you feel relaxed, that are pleasant. Minus are the things that you don't like, that you're resisting, that don't feel pleasant. What I want to say, though, is that neutral in this world is going to be plus. But we have to be very subtle about that. First of all, the meditation will not be about getting this right. It's about staying present, and if you just guess. But when we get into the neutral, it gets kind of subtle. I don't think this is a thing enough people talk about in the meditation world, but so for instance, neutral can feel boring or dry, but then what is that? That's minus, right? That's minus. If you have an attitude of it being boring or dry or bland, those all have a flavor of the negative to them. So that's minus. But if neutral doesn't have any flavor of that, if it's just quiet, peaceful, one might say, restful, if it has no problems, there really isn't a neutral. Either everything is neutral or nothing is neutral. And this is the way the human body works. We immediately, whatever experience comes in, we are immediately evaluating it plus or minus. Now, for those of you who've worked with me for a while, there's sort of a ladder of conceptualization that we work with in meditation, where the top of the ladder is just our normal narrative way of living life, where we're just telling a story about things. And most meditation asks you to drop under that narrative to some degree. At the very bottom of that ladder, where you're as far away from the narrative as possible, you're just using very basic sensory experiences, like hot, right? Or not in a bad or good way, right? Just like the actual sensation of warmth or the sensation of cold or the actual color purple that's going on right now. And that, you might still be using a label, but you're at the very bottom, at the bare level of conceptualization. Good and bad is somewhere up in the middle. So plus and minus is or something we add on top of. So when I say everything is there is either no neutral or it's all neutral, I really mean that, because if we drop under plus and minus, we'll get to it all being neutral in a sense, but that's going to be a different kind of goodness. But so we're going to start at a level where we're noticing plus and minus. If the plus and minus dissolves in your sit so that everything seems to have the same value tone, that's fine. That's fine. That's moving towards transcending the duality of plus and minus. So if you start getting to a point where like, I'm not noticing plus or minus, that we could call that plus or minus rest, to use a Shinzen type of term, where we're resting, we're in a kind of quiet from judgment, and a quiet from evaluation, a quiet of desire. It's a kind of powerful direction to be moving. So that's okay. But we're starting by noticing that, I don't know, most of it's got a plus or minus value right now. And again, when you get to the neutral stuff, just guess, plus or minus, whatever, guess. Okay, that's it. Now, before we get started, just notice as you sit here, would you say you're immediately going into a minus state or a plus state? And important that we're going to do our best to not to add judgment on top of the plus and minus, right? It will happen naturally. If you're just in a minus state, there's just something here that's a little bit more resistant or negative, that's fine. We're just accepting these pluses and minuses as they arise. Or are you kind of in a plus state? Like, oh yeah, I really want to sit here. I really like, there's something drawing you into this set. The simplest way would be, would I really, if I could just get up and leave, is that what I want to do? And that's fine, by the way, you are allowed to get up and leave. I won't be offended. But you can notice that. Or is there a part of you going, no, I really want to stay here? And again, we'll probably have multiple things going on. But usually when you sit down, there's an initial experience of the process. What we're trying to do here is practice accepting the fact that we aren't always accepting. We're practicing non-judgment of our judgment. We're going down and seeing that there's a pretty basic automatic human response to judge everything. And you can call that at the intellectual, it's really judgment. At a lower level, it's just basic desires. Or really at the very lowest level, it's positive tone, negative tone. It's just a basic. We're letting go of judgment of the fact we might have a lot of negative coming up. We might have a lot of minus coming up. Or we might have a lot of plus coming up, and you can let go of judgment of that as well. You're not doing better because you have more plus, you just have more plus. And don't hold on to it because it's going to go away. Because everything goes away. Everything changes. Okay, so now let's move into some resource in our experience. So I actually want us to tune into any part of your body experience if there is one that feels pleasant. A nice place can be your breath filling your belly. It could just be your feet on the ground, or your cheeks against the air, or your lips, or the back of your neck, or your spine, or the breath coming in your nose. There's a number of options. If your body is just too activated right now, it's totally normal. You can open your eyes and look out and find something that's pleasant, or you can open your ears and just listen to the silence or the birds outside, something that's pleasant. And we'll actually, for now, we'll label that good. I want us to really buy into the idea that this is good. So in your head, you find the experience, the sensation, and so I'm gonna guide as if we're focusing on the lower belly. But you can apply this to anything you choose to focus on. Good. 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 So concentration exercise here is to bring our attention to this pleasant sensation or okay sensation. And of course, the mind will want to be brought to problems, things that don't feel good, or problems in the mind. And that's normal. So we just notice when that happens and we go back to good. And if you think it's silly that you're saying good to your belly, then you might notice that's funny and you might see that that's good too. Funny is good. So the breath comes in and out in both directions. We can notice pleasantness, we can notice warmth, we can notice relaxation, we can notice pleasant tingling, we can notice spreading sensations, we can notice energy, we can notice strict pleasure. You can also just notice that it's okay in this part of your body. There's not a problem here. That's good, right? Okay, we might think it's neutral, but it's really good. Okay is really good. If you're lucky today, you might start feeling that good sort of spreading, so that there's a response in the body. And this will happen to everybody eventually. You just have to concentrate, spend time concentrating. If you attend to a good experience, then your body reacts as if it's in a good experience, meaning it relaxes a little bit more, or the pleasantness starts to spread, or a sense of okayness starts to spread. And you can allow your attention to go with that spreading goodness, right? So good spreads, right? It spreads. Good. Good. And there's places it might not want to spread, so you don't force it to spread. That's not what we're doing. You're letting it spread, and then there might be little tight balls of not good, right? And those are like rocks in the river, and you just let the goodness flow around that. And you're noticing the good. You ever seen a skier like skiing through the trees? And there's just trees everywhere, and it looks very dangerous. And the skier just doesn't look at the trees. The skier looks at the open spaces in front of them. And here, what we do here, we just don't worry about the parts that are not feeling great right now. We're not ignoring them. They'll be there. We'll come back to them. We're just flowing down the path of goodness. Letting go of expectation. You might feel really good and really relaxed, or you might just get a little taste of it. That's all that matters. That's what concentration is for, to be able to focus on little tastes. It's not about generating big experiences, though. That can happen, but it's not the goal. The goal is to be patient and reasonable with yourself. There is some good here. That's all we're noticing. And as we notice it, there might be some more good in response. Okay. So I'm just going to switch the label now. You might think this is meaningless, but we're going to do it. Instead of good, now we're just going to call it plus. And what we're doing there is we're letting go of any grasping to the goodness, right? Now we're just noticing, oh yeah, there's an experience that is on the plus side of the scale. Yeah, it's a plus. Yeah, if there's a minus side and there's a plus side, this is on the plus side. And now I'm going to allow you to notice if there's ever a distraction to something minus. You just notice it. When you get distracted to the minus, just notice it. Really notice the experience of the minus. Notice what it's made of. Oh yeah, there's some tension here. Minus, not bad, right? We're not saying it's bad. It's just on the, if there's a plus on the minus side, it's on the minus side. And then we bring our attention back to the plus side. By the way, as a reminder, for those who sit with me, you know this already, but you are welcome to just stay with the good practice the whole 30 minutes, right? There's no need to go into the more complicated practice if you're feeling like staying, that there was some real benefit in staying with the good practice. But make a decision. Don't think about it the whole time. Just decide, all right, I'm gonna try this plus minus thing, and then let's do it. As you do this, let your body release anything with breath or just energetically that comes up, as we're going to focus on the plus and minus of life. And that's where we hold things. So we're focusing on the pleasantness in our body. We're calling it plus. And we notice if we get distracted to something that's not so plus, right? No, there's the plus here, and now there's the minus here. Now notice if you get stuck in the minus. Just notice how magnetic it might be. Like you just had all this goodness, or whatever amount you had, but you might have had a fair amount of goodness. And then if you go and look at the minus, now the minus sort of takes over for some of us, not for everybody. But some days you might notice that. It might be a little bit sticky, or it might be a lot sticky. Really useful to notice. I was just having a good experience that was spreading through my body, and I call it plus now. But when I allow myself to look at the distraction in the minus, it's kind of infects my whole experience, or it is very sticky to my attention. That's just useful to notice. But I want you to notice that and then bring your attention back to plus. And now it's not, you can't do this robotically. You have to actually notice the plus. So if the negative sort of took over, and now it's hard to find the plus, you have to go find it. And you go back and you stay with it till you find plus again. We're not getting rid of the minus. We're just making sure that we can keep finding plus, even though we've noticed the minus. And if you need to, you can go back into good practice to see if that will help you stabilize back in plus. So we're still doing a concentration exercise on the plus part of our experience, but we're allowing ourselves to take a moment with the distraction and noticing if it's minus. Now, by the way, if the distraction is also plus, then just don't worry about it. You can either stay with it or you can go back to the original resource. So in our head, it might be like this: plus, 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 minus, plus, minus, plus. By the way, the minus can be in the body, it could be in the senses, it could be in the mind, it could be in the emotions. So can the plus. So we started the plus out in physical sensation, but we can have thoughts that have a positive flavor or have a negative flavor. So I want you to get good over time. That's one, staying with the positive. That is what we call resource practice. Two, second skill, noticing the minus and being able to go back to the positive, to the plus, and re-ground yourself in it. So those are the first two skills that we're practicing here. And you can stay with the first skill if you want, just stay with the positive. Or you can start practicing the second skill, noticing when we're drawn into minus, anywhere in our body or mind, sort of noticing the experience of minus, noticing how sticky it is, and then going back to plus and re-grounding ourselves in, even if it's very small, a plus experience. This is not because plus is, in the way we're doing this, is not because plus is preferable to minus. Of course it is in some sense, but not in the meditation. But it's because minus is much stickier than plus. So we want to learn to notice the minus and let go of its stickiness. We're going to build up a habit of being drawn to the plus so it becomes as sticky as the minus. Ultimately, we want them to both be completely non-stick, non-stick pans. Okay, so for the third step here, and no one is obligated to continue, it gets a little more advanced. We're sort of going to let go of the control a little bit more. And now we're just going to let our attention wander. And if it wants to stay with minus for a while, let it stay as long as it wants. And we keep labeling whatever is arising as minus or plus. Now, I do want you to notice if you're starting to get stuck in a minus experience. It's okay if you get a lot of minus, but if you're getting stuck in a minus experience, I want you to take a little bit of control and try to balance it out so that we can get roughly equal amounts of minus and plus. But first, just see how much you can ease off and see what happens. See how far away the plus gets if you do that. Maybe it doesn't at all. For some of you who've been practicing with me for a while, you might find yourself just sitting in the plus. When I sat down to do the sit this morning, as we began, I was just in plus. Just sat down and I was like, oh yeah, really positive. So it doesn't have to be that way. But it's really useful to notice, if you let go of control, do you end up on the plus side or the minus side of your experience? And it's okay. That's okay. It's okay. Whatever comes up, that's okay. That's just a pattern that we are now noticing. And it is plus that we're noticing it. It's double plus good that we're noticing it. So it might sound like this inside. Plus, minus, plus, minus, minus, plus, plus, plus. We're going to let you do this for a little while. There's actually quite a bit of things to learn here. I'm not going to talk about them all. I'm going to let you explore it. We are not totally moving into global concentration, meaning we're not totally freeing ourselves from control, because I don't want any of us to get stuck in the minus side. You give up enough control that you can notice if you get stuck in the minus side, and then you want to bring it back and try to balance it out. If you start to get overwhelmed at all, please then go back to the first step and find yourself in good. Do the work to get you back there. We're learning to notice that we are constantly in a judgmental stance towards our life, that we're in a constant evaluating stance, maybe a better word, towards our life. This is where what I said about neutral applies. For those of you that get kind of relaxed and peaceful during this, you notice things might get closer. They're going to get less dramatic. It'll be less big bad and big good, and it'll feel like it gets more neutral. And I want you to notice the plus part of that neutral experience. And the other side of that is it starts getting so minusy that you shut down, and then you'll get in a kind of neutral that is has a minus flavor, because it's kind of distant and dry or boring or cold. But if you're having an experience that is not obviously plus or minus, that's okay. Make a guess and just stay with the experience. We're not trying to find anything anymore. We're just letting what arises arise. This is still a concentration exercise in that we aren't getting caught up in too many stories about what's happening. We're just noticing the habitual evaluation that's going on. And an evaluation ultimately at the lowest level is a physical evaluation, like you immediately want or don't want, like or don't like. But at the top level, it can be very mental. When you really let go of the mind in this and you just reduce the mind to plus minus, you no longer have attachment to whether you're doing the plus or the minus, that it's okay to have some minus. You'll start noticing things like, oh, that minus experience turned into a plus experience. Honestly, one of the most important things you can observe in your life. But don't search it out. It won't happen until you've become comfortable with this practice with disentangling yourself from the liking, not liking that's happening, and just watching it. We're not trying to get rid of liking and not liking, desire and aversion. Those are all allowed here. If you are able today to do this in a way where you're not getting overwhelmed by the minus, you'll start to notice that this practice will give you some freedom from suffering, because you're no longer identifying with the minus experience. You're just allowing yourself to notice it happen, rather than identifying yourself as the thing that doesn't want. You're just noticing the doesn't wanting, the not wanting, the aversion. And you're noticing that it's right next to wanting or liking. And sometimes you might notice a flickering of like and not like. And that could be a flickering because your attention is bouncing between two different points of experience, or even deeper, it could be a flickering on the same experience. Now, when it starts to flicker, you won't be able to label it fast enough. You just might notice that experience was bouncing back and forth across the line. When you really notice that, eventually it will settle into either transcendent, below plus and minus, or plus. So in the next 4 minutes or 5 minutes as we finish up, I would invite you, if you're not settled, to go back to resource. If this has been unsettling or is causing more tension, which is totally normal because we've been investigating things that are challenging for us a little bit in our experience, then I would invite you to go back to resource at the beginning. Use your attention to change our habit of staying in the negative and go to the positive for a while. And you can go back to using the word good or pleasure, or I like this, or I love this. If you are, on the other hand, this practice has settled you and caused you to drop into peacefulness, then you can just stay with it and really let go of any control. So we're into do nothing land. But we just keep up the plus minus labeling. We're just letting the attention wander anywhere. And just to add to that, notice, is there some area that you were avoiding? I'm not telling you to go there, but let go of that avoidance and stay with the plus minus. Reminding yourself that today I want you to end up with a settled feeling. So anytime this gets too challenging, please go back to resource. letting go of more and more effort, no matter where you are now. So if you've been focusing on resource, just letting go of any effort, just starting to coast. I'd like you to notice the plus experience in letting go of effort. Just see what happens when you don't struggle, you don't try to accomplish anything with your meditation. Can you notice just a little bit of plus that comes, a little bit of pleasure or relaxation or release that comes, and you go, okay, I don't have to try so hard. Okay, and we're going to finish up then. As always, you're welcome to continue sitting if that's working for you today. But if you're ready to open your eyes, open your eyes. You can always, as with any good meditation, continue the meditation as you open your eyes. You can continue noticing the plus and the minus. And you can start moving your body, how it wants to move. Maybe giving your body some affection, thanking it for being still while you observed it so closely. And a little stretching around the shoulders, moving the neck. Very good.